Sun Wukong, when you caused great disturbance at the Celestial Palace, I had to exercise enormous Dharma power to have you pressed beneath the mountain of 5 phases. Fortunately, your heaven-sent calamity came to an end, and you embraced the Buddhist religion. I am pleased even more by the fact that you were devoted to the scourging of evil and the exaltation of good. Throughout your journey you made great merit by smelting the demons and defeating the fiends. For being faithful in the end as you were in the beginning, I hereby give you the grand promotion and appoint you the Buddha victorious in strife. Zhu Wuneng, you were originally an aquatic deity of the heavenly river, the marshal of heavenly reeds. For getting drunk during the festival of immortal peaches and insulting the divine maiden, you were banished to an incarnation in the region below which would give you the body of a beast. Fortunately, you still cherished and loved the human form, so that even when you sinned at the Cloudy Paths cave in Fuling Mountain, you eventually submitted to our great religion and embraced our vows. Although you protected the sage monk on his way, you were still quite mischievous, for greed and lust were never wholly extinguished in you. For the merit of toting the luggage, however, I hereby grant you promotion and appoint you janitor of the altars. They have all become Buddhas. Shouted 8 rules. Why am I alone made janitor of the altars? Because you are still talkative and lazy. Replied Tathagata. And you retain an enormous appetite. Within the 4 great continents of the world, there are many people who observe our religion. Whenever there are Buddhist services, you will be asked to clear the altars. That's an appointment which offers you plenty of enjoyment. How could it be bad? Xiao Wujing, you were originally the great curtain-raising captain. Because you broke a crystal chalice during the festival of immortal peaches, you were banished to the region below, where at the river of flowing sand you sinned by devouring humans. Fortunately, you submitted to our religion and remained firm in your faith. As you escorted the sage monk, you made merit by leading his horse over all those mountains. I hereby grant you promotion and appoint you the golden-bodied Arhat. Then he said to the white horse, you were originally the prince of Dragon King Guangjin of the Western Ocean. Because you disobeyed your father's command and committed the crime of unfiliality, you were to be executed. Fortunately, you made submission to the law and accepted our vows. Because you carried the sage monk daily on your back during his journey to the west, and because you also took the holy scriptures back to the east, you too have made merit. I hereby grant you promotion and appoint you one of the dragons belonging to the 8 classes of supernatural beings. The elder, his 3 disciples, and the horse all kowtowed to thank the Buddha, who ordered some of the guardians to take the horse to the dragon transforming pool at the back of the Spirit Mountain. After being pushed into the pool, the horse stretched himself, and in a little while he shed his coat, horns began to grow on his head, golden scales appeared all over his body, and silver whiskers emerged on his cheeks. His whole body shrouded in auspicious air, and his 4 paws wrapped in hallowed clouds, he soared out of the pool and circled inside the monastery gate, on top of one of the pillars that support heaven. As the various Buddhas gave praise to the great Dharma of Tathagata, Pilgrim Sun said also to the Tang monk, Master, I've become a Buddha now, just like you. It can't be that I still must wear a golden fillet. And you wouldn't want to clamp my head still by reciting that so-called tight fillet spell, would you? Recite the loose fillet spell quickly and get it off my head. I'm going to smash it to pieces, so that so-called Bodhisattva can't use it anymore to play tricks on other people. Because you were difficult to control previously. Said the Tang monk. This method had to be used to restrain you. Now that you have become a Buddha, naturally, it will be gone. How could it be still on your head? Try touching your head and see. Pilgrim raised his hand and felt along his head, and indeed the fillet had vanished. So at that time, Buddha Tandana, Buddha victorious in strife, janitor of the altars, and golden-bodied Arhat all assumed the position of their own rightful fruition. The heavenly dragon horse too returned to immortality, and we have a testimonial poem for them. The poem says, One real body dropped to the dusty plain, fuses with 4 signs to tend the self again. In 5 phases terms forms are dead and void. The fiend's vain names one should all avoid. Great bodies the right sandana fruition. Appointments crown this rise from perdition. Gracious light of scriptures now worldwide dilates. As 5 sages live within Advaya's gates. At the time when these 5 sages assumed their positions, the various Buddhist patriarchs, bodhisattvas, sage priests, arhats, guardians, bhikkhus, upasakas and upasikas, the immortals of various mountains and caves, the grand divinities, the gods of darkness and light, the sentinels, the guardians of monasteries, and all the immortals and preceptors who had attained the way all came to listen to the proclamation before retiring to their proper stations. Look now at colored mists crowding the spirit vulture peak, and hallowed clouds gathered in the world of bliss. Gold dragons safely sleeping, jade tigers resting in peace. Black hares scampering freely, snakes and turtles circling at will. Phoenixes, red and blue, gambol pleasantly. Black apes and white deer saunter happily. Strange flowers of 8 periods. Divine fruits of 4 seasons. Hoary pines and old junipers. Jade cypresses and aged bamboos. 5 colored plums often blossoming and bearing fruit. Millennial peaches frequently ripening and fresh. 1,000 flowers and fruits vying for beauty. A whole sky full of auspicious mists. Pressing their palms together to indicate their devotion, the holy congregation all chanted, "I submit to Deepa Kara, the Buddha of antiquity. I submit to Bhayajaya Vyurya Prabha A, the physician and Buddha of crystal lights. I submit to the Buddha Sakyamuni. I submit to the Buddha of the past, present, and future. I submit to the Buddha of pure joy. I submit to the Buddha Vairocana. I submit to the Buddha, King of the precious banner. I submit to the Maitreya, the honored Buddha. I submit to the Buddha Amitabha. I submit to Sukhavativyuha, the Buddha of infinite life. I submit to the Buddha who receives and leads to immortality. I submit to the Buddha of diamond indestructibility. I submit to Shurya, the Buddha of precious light. I submit to Manjusri, the Buddha of the race of honorable dragon kings. I submit to the Buddha of zealous progress and virtue. I submit to Kandraprabha, the Buddha of precious moonlight. I submit to the Buddha of presence without ignorance. I submit to Varuna, the Buddha of sky and water. I submit to the Buddha Naraya A. I submit to the Buddha of radiant meritorious works. I submit to the Buddha of talented meritorious works. I submit to Svagata, the Buddha of the well-departed. I submit to the Buddha of Sandana light. I submit to the Buddha of jeweled banner. I submit to the Buddha of the light of wisdom torch. I submit to the Buddha of the light of sea virtue. I submit to the Buddha of great mercy light. I submit to the Buddha, King of compassion power. I submit to the Buddha, leader of the sages. I submit to the Buddha of vast solemnity. I submit to the Buddha of golden radiance. I submit to the Buddha of luminous gifts. I submit to the Buddha victorious in wisdom. I submit to the Buddha, quiescent light of the world. I submit to the Buddha, light of the sun and moon. I submit to the Buddha, light of the sun and moon pearl. I submit to the Buddha, King of the victorious banner. I submit to the Buddha of wondrous tone and sound. I submit to the Buddha, banner of permanent light. I submit to the Buddha, lamp that scans the world. I submit to the Buddha, King of surpassing Dharma. I submit to the Buddha of Sumaru light. I submit to the Buddha, King of great wisdom. I submit to the Buddha of golden sea light. I submit to the Buddha of great perfect light. I submit to the Buddha of the gift of light. I submit to the Buddha of Sandana merit. I submit to the Buddha victorious in strife. I submit to the Bodhisattva Guanshuyin. I submit to the Bodhisattva great power coming. I submit to the Bodhisattva Manjusri. I submit to the Bodhisattva Vivabhadra and other Bodhisattvas. I submit to the various bodhisattvas of the great pure ocean. I submit to the bodhisattva, the Buddha of Lotus Pool and Ocean Assembly. I submit to the various bodhisattvas in the western heaven of ultimate bliss. I submit to the great bodhisattvas, the 3,000 guardians. I submit to the great bodhisattvas, the 500 arhats. I submit to the bodhisattva, Bhikkhu I submit to the bodhisattva of boundless and limitless Dharma. I submit to the bodhisattva, Diamond Great Scholar Sage. I submit to the bodhisattva, Janitor of the Altars. I submit to the bodhisattva, Golden-Bodied Arhat of 8 Jewels. I submit to the bodhisattva of vast strength, the heavenly dragon of 8 divisions of supernatural beings. Such are these various Buddhas in all the worlds. I wish to use these merits to adorn Buddha's pure land, to repay fourfold grace above, and save those on 3 paths below. If there are those who see and hear, their minds will find enlightenment. Their births with us in paradise will be this body's recompense. All the Buddhas of past, present, future in all the world, the various honored bodhisattvas and mahasattvas. Mahaprajna Paramita. Here ends the journey to the West.